I am Michelle Dewberry and I'm with you until 7 o'clock tonight, alongside me my panel, Annunziata Rees-Mogg and the former Brexit Party MEP, and Tom Buick, the education consultant and visiting professor. Good evening to both of you. You're very welcome tonight, as are each and every single one of you at home. What's on your mind tonight? Get in touch with me all the usual ways. You can email gbviews@gbnews.com, tweet or X me, or of course you can do what you want. You can take me on the car if you need to nip out. You can put me on the radio, wherever you are, though. You're very welcome tonight, as per usual, because you know the drill. It is about you guys as well. Look, the Prime Minister, he gave his big keynote speech today at the Labour Party conference in Liverpool. We're going to come on to it in just a second, but I can tell you now, it's going to be spoken about for months to come for a bit of a gaffe. Listen.
I call again for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza, the return of the sausages.
The return of the sausages. I'm telling you now, my inbox has been filled with sausage innuendos since that gaffe happened. And I've been thinking, what was on his mind? Why was he thinking about sausages? Maybe he was thinking about this. Do you remember this?
I think next thing he went on to sausages.
Why should he do sausages?
Well, George next door gives him sausages, you know. He comes out every Thursday with a plate of sausages, you know, and puts them on back doorstep, and Prince goes and has a good tuck-in.
Tell us what you have on a Thursday, Prince.
Yeah, what's George give you, Prince? A what?
Sorry, I couldn't help it. If you remember that, I'm telling you now, you're officially old. Anyway, look, let me give you the context, shall we, why he was talking about sausages. Here it is in its entirety, just so you know what on earth has been going on.
All parties to pull back from the brink. I call again for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza, the return of the sausages, the hostages, and a
See, so he was actually talking about the very serious situation in the Middle East. Now, whilst there's been a lot of people making fun of the gaffe, and I've got to confess, it is quite funny when you look at some of the jokes and the memes that are going around. I do confess to laughing at them. But there are a lot of people, actually, that are quite upset today, saying that Keir Starmer, saying that when he was talking about Israeli hostages, many people are interpreting this with fury, saying it is reflective of Keir Starmer not taking their needs seriously.
I mean, to be fair to Keir Starmer, I think anyone can misspeak, but this was a particularly poor word to get wrong, and to get wrong in such a amusing, if accidentally amusing, way. I am, thank you, Michelle, definitely officially old. I remember That's Life far too well. 1979,
that clip, that dog clip.
It got reshowed a lot.
I know, and it wasn't true. I hate to break it all to you. That dog couldn't actually speak. But anyway, that gaffe, it is quite a shame, actually. We will come on in a second to some of the key points that he was making. But, yeah, like I said, it's really divided people, and it has actually caused quite a lot of upset.
I'm also old enough to remember the original spitting image, and I think there will be people in Labour's high command tonight glad that programme isn't still on air. But look, a serious point. You know, he was, of course, referring to 101 hostages who have not seen their families since October the 7th and that terrorist attack by Hamas. And that's obviously what makes it, I think, a particularly serious gaffe. That said, though, I agree with you, Annunziata. Everybody misspeaks, including those in high office and in politics, not least when they're reading the autocue. And he did correct himself very quickly.
He did, but I think it does make it all the less forgivable that just outside Labour Party conference, there are people talking of the genocide being committed by Israel, which I obviously would not agree with. I think that is not what's happened by any stretch of the imagination, but the protesters are very firmly on one side and one side only, when they've got the Star of David with blood dropping out of it and a line through that, if you've seen those images, that this is a very, very emotive issue, and Labour has to tread very, very carefully when that's what they're being heckled about. He was heckled in this speech to free the children of Gaza. It's really worrying when this isn't actually top and centre of his mind, and instead his breakfast is. But everyone does make mistakes.
It is hard, especially when you're speaking. When you're speaking in a live environment, you know everyone's watching you. You're under pressure. I mean, you know, that is his job. He is supposed to be able to handle all the pressure. But, you know, it was a very unfortunate mistake to make when talking about such a sensitive issue. As you allude to, we had a protester again today. He had a pre-prepared line for him, though, didn't he? He was, you know, it's not 2019, the party's moved on, whatever. But he was very robust on that. He's saying that we call again for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza and so on and so forth. He's had a lot of criticism, the Labour Party's had a lot of criticism for their approach to this topic.
He did misspeak, but I think in terms of the Labour Party sensitivities, I mean, I was in the conference hall 4 years ago, actually, when Jeremy Corbyn was leader of the opposition, and it was festooned with Palestinian flags. So I think Labour has learnt from the past, where it has not only misspoke but misstepped, I think, around this very, very sensitive conflict. But look at the substance of what the Prime Minister said today. Labour is behind a two-state solution. It does want to see a ceasefire. Every night now on our TV screens, we're seeing appalling pictures of what's happening in Lebanon with bombing of civilian areas. I know the Israelis, the IDF, would say that they're taking out Hezbollah terrorists, who, let's be clear, are not exactly on the side of Israel. So it is a very sensitive situation. But I think the fact that he did correct himself immediately, I think you've got to give the guy benefit of the doubt. And it wasn't that long ago. Do you remember David Cameron, who famously on a radio station, I shan't say the word, but he talked about too many tweets maker? You know, I mean, Prime Ministers have been there before and have been shown to
I remember what people called Jeremy Hunt when they're apparently misspeaking about him. That word is not appropriate for tea time television. But look, he did indeed, Keir Starmer, bring up a number of things that he wanted to focus on. One of these was so-called Hillsborough law, duty of candour. I think I might have a clip, actually, that I can play to show you that.
Law for Liverpool, a law for the 97. A law that people shouldn't have had to fight so hard to get. Because today, I can confirm that the duty of candour will apply to public authorities and public servants. The bill will include criminal sanctions, and that the Hillsborough law will be introduced to Parliament before the next anniversary in April.
Big round of applause for that. Do you agree with that?
Do our public servants have a duty to be truthful? Yes. Is it much more important that we have timely investigations when things go wrong? I think that is of much more concern to the families who have lost loved ones in all sorts of different circumstances when they have to wait decades for any form of justice at all.
Tom?
At one level, I mean, it is a pity that we need a law, actually. You know, we need to legislate. As Annunziata is saying, I think, you know, it should come with the territory as a public servant. You should speak with candour, and there are already mechanisms, for example, for permanent secretaries and senior civil servants in front of select committees, or even in the back channels if they're not happy with particular issues. That said, we're going to have this law. There have been far too many scandals. I mean, not just going back decades to Hillsborough, but of course even with the post office scandal, what's happened there, if there'd been more of a duty of candour to those various post office ministers that clearly, you know, in my view, were misled by their officials on several
occasions. And the contaminated blood.
And the contaminated
which
blood.
has been decades.
So, you know, we are where we are. I think this is a confidence building measure. But I suspect why it's also being introduced is because the current threshold, the bar for the so-called misconduct in public office, is also very high to get a conviction around that. And I suspect there will be prosecutions in the future that will go down this route rather than down the misconduct in public office.
Yeah, because I think often people want to see justice being done. People often get in touch with me about some of these big scandals, say, well, we want criminal prosecutions. It's not just enough for people to, I don't know, be suspended or whatever. People want to see people behind bars when they've been held and found responsible for significant failings. Speaking of significant failings, homelessness, that was an issue that Keir Starmer touched on as well. He talked about veterans that have served the country having houses for them. Listen.
Every town and city in this country, people who were prepared to make the ultimate sacrifice for our nation, who put their lives on the line to protect all of us, but who will not have a safe place to sleep tonight. We cannot stand by and let this happen anymore. So today I can announce that this government will respect that service We will repay those who served us and house all veterans in housing need. Homes will be there for heroes. We can make the very same promise to other people at risk of homelessness, young care leavers, victims of domestic abuse. They will have the security they deserve. They will have a roof over their head because Britain belongs to them.
For that, lots of support and appreciation for that policy.
Well, I was absolutely delighted to see this announcement today, and indeed, real policy announcements in an otherwise quite policy-light speech, and we'll get on to that and the reasons for that. But, as someone who's a former foster care leaver, to see care leavers as one of the 3 groups that will get home over their head as of law, as of right, that's something as a civilised society we should have been doing a very long time ago, and I think there would be people watching this as well who've suffered domestic violence or know someone in the family who's gone through domestic violence, or they've got someone who's served in the armed forces and fallen on bad times. I think this is the least we can do.
And it's great rhetoric.
Society.
It's great rhetoric. And like you, I was very pleased to hear that. I was nodding along because all of those vulnerable groups are people that we all want to see safe. But do you believe it's going to happen?
Well, it will happen because the housing law will change. I mean, one of the problems at the moment and why we've got so many street homeless, rough sleepers, is because, our arcane housing law, for example, only tends to recognise families, those with children. That's why we've got 300,000 children living in bed and breakfast accommodation because they're homeless, because of actually these no-fault evictions, for example. And that was something else that was announced today that the Labour government is going to put an end to, because the former Tory government had it on as a bill but then backed off at the last minute. So I think these are actually solid, practical things, Michelle, which demonstrate actually that we have got now a more progressive government in power, and that's something I obviously would welcome.
So you're a happy man tonight?
I'm far more cynical, that of course we all want homes for heroes, care leavers, victims of domestic abuse to be able to have a roof over their head. But where are those roofs going to come from?
That we have got. That's the answer. That was announced today.
They might be loosening up planning, but how many houses are we going to have built in the next 6 months? This is announced as though overnight there is going to be change, that priorities will be changed. What will actually happen is that who is on a priority list and who is not will change. It might be a different cohort of people who end up lower down the chain and not getting somewhere to live, but it won't change the fundamentals. They've already announced that asylum seekers are going to be made eligible for these homes. We are now at millions of people who are suddenly at the top of a priority list with no homes available for them to go to. And the planning restrictions that we have, even if loosened up, and the lack of builders, the lack of bricks, this is not going to happen overnight. It might be steps in the right direction, but I feel he was trying to con people that things would change.
I don't see it like that. And look, the government has a target of 1.5 million homes by the end of this Parliament. Actually, the last Conservative government had a housing target and backed off again under pressure from its backbenchers and no doubt from developers who've been land banking for far too long.
Well, as you know, actually, what they achieved was higher than had been achieved in over 30 years. And the house building was heading in the right direction. But it's being outstripped by immigration, which Keir Starmer barely touched on.
Well, if the last government were in power for 14 years, at least 7 of that 10 million people came in, swelled our population during that time. We should have been building at least 600,000 housing units a year. We were struggling to build between 250, 300,000. So that's why we've got the housing crisis we've got.
And that's the target that Keir Starmer's got over 5 years, is 300,000 a year. And so far, he hasn't begun to meet it. He's got a long way to go.
But I think there are people watching this, and they go out and do their shop. And, Michelle, I know you actually talk to homeless people quite a lot on your rounds. And it's just a disgrace when you trip over people who say, yes, I served in Afghanistan, or even I served in the Falklands that long ago, and they're sleeping rough. Or through no fault of their own, they've been in foster care and they've been kicked out because the state stopped supporting them at a certain age and because they're no longer corporate parents to them. I think we can put an end to that scandal, but we also need a holistic strategy around housing, decent housing for everyone.
We all agree that those people need the extra support and that they need safety and security of where they can live. But we've got to be realistic. You can't have every single group of people at the top of a priority list for a very limited resource.
Yeah.
And Keir Starmer did not say that he was going to build over the entire country. He said he was going to loosen the planning laws somewhat, open up brownfields, so on and so forth. This is very limited steps. They are well below their target for the first 8 weeks of house building into this year of their 5-year tenure. They have got to do a massive catch-up to make their 1.5, and 1.5 is nowhere near enough anyway.
Are you on the housing list? If so, how long have you been on it? When you hear about all these new people on the priorities, how does that make you feel? Help for Heroes, I was interested in their response. They say that the promises with the veterans' housing is promising, but they flag something that's very important, and I don't think it's just affecting this group. They're saying that homelessness doesn't often exist just in isolation. They're saying that there's other issues that occur, particularly, they say, with veterans. Some of the transition back to Civvy Street is very difficult, so you've got to have that whole wraparound support as well. See, that's a key question, isn't it? It's all well and good just putting someone in a flat, but are you going to support them when they're there? What do you reckon?